This is the talk of Music City Real Estate.
Welcome back to another episode of the Talk of Music City Real Estate,
where we educate and motivate all things real estate.
My name is Monte Mohr with Realty One Group Music City.
Hey, and I'm Carey Ann with CMG Financial and my mortgage team.
Every week we'll be posting a new episode chock full of Nashville real estate value.
Yes, and you can follow along and subscribe at talkmusiccity.com.
Got a question for us? Ask away at questions@talkmusiccity.com.
Monty.
Carey Ann, so good to see your smile.
Yes, it's good to be back.
And we have
with us.
Mr. Aaron Schroer.
The one, the only.
With Tennessee Home Inspectors. Yay.
Glad to be here again. Thank you.
I love that.
Good to see you.
We're going to go back. Aaron, remember that one time when we were at a convention together and it was Halloween? And you dressed of
Inspector Gadget.
Inspector Gadget. It was the best costume. It was so good.
Wow.
I always think of inspectors.
Right.
Inspector Gadget. Do you know who we're talking about?
I do. That was during my time. Thank you very much. Inspector Gadget. I'm surprised
awesome.
it was your turn.
It was a good one. Yeah, it was right there. Right there.
To do Inspector Gadget, you have to have the trench coat and you got to have hands coming out of the top of your head.
Yes, and you did. You had it all. You did. So you are a very talented and very well-known leader in the industry with all things inspections.
Thank you.
Yes.
Carey Ann, I asked Aaron to join us today because I think there's probably not a bigger deal killer out there. Typically in a transaction, you would know better than I do since you look at a lot more than I do even, and we're averaging around 100 transactions a month here. The deal killer being that dastardly home inspection, okay? I call it more commonly known as the weasel clause, you know?
Oh,
okay.
That's a way of calling it. Sure.
Weasel your way out of the deal. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fallback excuse anyhow. But so you know, to be a pro, to be well worth that 2 or 3 or 4 or 19% commission that you're going to charge, well, you've got to be able to get to the finish line, obviously.
Yeah, with make sure that you're giving me a quality house too. So I do like the inspector for that.
No, I mean it's the talent. I think the goal, and I've always tried to teach our agents this, is that you want the home scrutinized, but no home stands up to the scrutiny of some people. Some people pride themselves in deal killers,
Oh, sure. Right. I mean, some of the, obvious things, right, wear and tear, but that's just the norm, right? Or is there a hidden item? I would assume you're looking for the real concerns, that need to be addressed immediately. Before
we get started with Aaron's, I want to share a quick experience from the old guy here who's been doing this for 4 decades, because it really emphasize the importance of we're only as good, Carey Ann, you know this, we're only as good as those we surround ourselves with. Okay? And if at the end of the day, we're all under this umbrella experience, as far as the consumer is concerned, of the real estate experience.
Yeah.
It's not the homeowner or the home inspector world and the lender world and the realtor world. We're all under this one big umbrella called the real estate experience. And if there was ever a need for that real estate experience reputation to be, lifted up, now's a good time for that. But let me tell a quick story. I used to be friends with my inspector. That's why you and I don't hang out, Aaron. I want an objective standpoint, But, I used to be buddies with this guy, nice guy. He used to be in the music business, like everybody else in Nashville, I guess. No offense, Carey Ann. But
I got to get here somehow.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's how I got here too. But I was married to a wannabe singer. But anyway, so about a month after this inspection, it was a drive at home on. I started to say the street, but I guess I better not get that familiar with it. But anyhow, in Murfreesboro on a golf course, and while there, the inspector, I thought, was doing his thing. I thought everything was cool. Well, a month or two, anyhow, after the inspection, after the closing, my client, my buyer's refrigerator upstairs in the bonus room gave up the ghost and flooded the upstairs.
Oh, yikes.
They decided to pull the carpet back from the exterior wall, and lo and behold, they noticed the tack strip was all eaten up by termites. This is the second floor of the house. It's a drive at home, synthetic stucco home. If you have an opportunity to sell synthetic stucco, be cautious on this topic. That moisture intrusion. anyways, long story short, the seller and myself get sued from my buyer about termites in this house. Okay. So it turned out that, again, long story short, the peak of the house had a little window there, decorative window up in the attic. And when we came in after the fact and saw that underneath that window was a different color than the sides of that window because water had been pouring down.
Oh, goodness.
And even though the homeowner had, prior to this, had spent $6,000 cutting the driveway up, sealing everything, making sure everything was right, there was enough water coming down that window because it wasn't sealed correctly that it washed everything out in the front of that house, and the whole front of the house was eaten up with termites.
Yeah.
Now, his excuse when I got an invitation to a deposition, as my inspector did.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, a 9-hour one to be exact, with 2 attorneys pecking at me like I was a tomato worm and they were chickens. They just, it was awful. I wanted to cry when I got out of there. It was awful. Anyhow, but the inspector didn't bother to show up. He had allowed his E&O insurance to expire, and so he didn't even show up. That's frustrating when I find out that he's still out there inspecting. Although he's quit inspecting now, and now he's in the mortgage business. But anyway, so lovely. Anyway, the point is,
we make it look so easy.
Know your people, guys. Know your people. Make sure you got somebody reputable in your corner, because your reputation is only good as those you surround yourselves with. Okay,
yeah, for sure.
Learn from the old guy.
For sure. I think we're going to talk about possibly the something that you highlight in your classes. And one thing that's so great with Aaron, not only is he amazing at the inspection business, but also he brings lots of value to our real estate community through his CE credit classes. And so one of those, I think you were going to share with us today, talks about what again?
Contractual things with the home inspection. So I see a downfall. I don't know if it's a downfall, but I see holes in the armor of agents based on what they put into their repair amendments. So when we go to, sometimes we're asked to go do a reinspection on repairs after they're made, and it's part of the contract. They're going to give it to the lender, and the title company's going to get this, and so when we go evaluate those repairs, we're kind of bound to the verbiage that's in there, and it could be better. So when I design my CE classes, I always like to take, hey, what's the most important message I can bring to the industry? Where do I see things are falling apart, and how can I help lift people up so they're better at their
Yeah, and I think home inspections, definitely are a tool, right, to be used to make sure that this makes sense for me to move in a forward direction. And again, do you use a percentage like 80% of the house, is great, or a larger percent, and there's only a few minor repairs, let's move in a forward direction, and not, like you said, not let us kill this deal over this home inspection, possibly. I just remember the situation when I had a very expensive home inspection, because you and I didn't know each other at the time, and I got one, but they never moved the curtains away on my windows, remember? And then when I finally moved, the beautiful curtains that they so kindly were leaving for me, and they were kind of ugly, so I needed to change them. And what are those? Oh, mushrooms growing out of my windows, right? And needed all brand new windows because all of the windows were warped, right? And that was a very large expense that I wasn't expecting, on that. So little things, I think that are key when we use, if I'm not an everyday gal who understands all things home, I'm going to look at that home inspection, makes sense. But earlier today, you were talking about, how you had a bunch of things on a contract listed for a certain price point, and if you really broke down the value of each one of those repairs, it was probably half of the amount that they were requesting, in lieu of repairs too, right? So we see that. And I think what you're talking about, Aaron, is the verbiage on how people are writing it within the contracts, whether it is in lieu of repair or completion of.
Yep.
So Aaron, elaborate on that. What are you feeling that the agents watching this right now could learn from as far as conveying that message properly so that their client is taken care of well?
All right. I would say when you're working through the repair worksheets and you're trying to negotiate for repairs specifically, because money's kind of outside the topic for what we do. We don't quote what it would cost to fix things or anything of that sort. Right. But if you're specifying repairs, be specific. Right? That's the number one thing. Is you have to be specific. I was on a roof once, looking at a repair. There was some plumbing boots that they were past their expiration date. They had dry rot. You could stick your finger in the plumbing boot. So the plumbing boot protects the penetration in the roof where pipes come through, and that has to have a rubber seal. And these were just, eroded by the ultraviolet lights of the sun and had been ruined at that point. And I'm looking at this repair request or amendment, this repair amendment that said fix damaged boot over the master suite. And okay, the repair was just a bunch of caulk. They took some silicone.
I was going to say, that's what it said, fix it?
Fix.
Oh, wow.
So, I'm standing here, and now
so how do you fix a rotted boot? With caulk.
Right. So by not being specific, they did a very poor repair. And, growing in this industry, not being labeled as a deal killer, not getting blackballed, trying to be all things to all people, we have to make agents look good too. And that's just part of it. If you're going to succeed, you have to
make them shine bright, for sure.
You have to play well with both sides. I have to play well with the listing agents and with the buyer's agent. Our contract is with the client. We have to represent and do our absolute best for them. But at the same time, everybody's got to, it's got to be a win-win for everybody if we're all going to play nice together. And ultimately, that's the goal. It should be anyway, I think. So 1000%. They could have been specific saying, replace the damaged plumbing boot, or they could have said install a boot saver, which is a thing that just slips over it. Either one of those would have been great repairs, but this was bad. So I'm like, well, I can't just say it's repaired, and that's my integrity, and I have to stand by that, or else it's my errors and omissions insurance. So at that point, I call the buyer's agent on the phone and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. We need to move forward with it. My advice is let's just get somebody over here to install a boot saver, and we just act like this didn't happen.
Wow.
And let's make that work soon, fast. And we'll get them to do that, and everybody will be fine. But that's just an example, right? And it goes on and on and on and on.
Well, it's really helpful if you have a little idea about what construction consists of, Unfortunately, that's not covered in our real estate licensing.
Nope.
And unfortunately, I've seen it too many times where that message is not conveyed effectively and that consumer is not taken care of well because, understanding construction, but just like you described, it sounds innocent to the average person, probably fixed boot. But first thing I saw was, in my mind, was a rotted boot and somebody putting caulk on it before you ever mentioned the caulk.
Right?
Because that's how you fix a rotted boot, is you put caulk on it. No, you replace the damn thing because it's not going to get any better.
No. And
with
that caulk's temporary.
That caulk is going to maybe last 6 months, depending on the sun and so forth and the rain.
Right.
And the directions and so forth. So
yeah, I think I don't know if there's a judgment on the quality, right, of completion of repair. I think that makes it difficult, and I think that's why there's a lot of folks that do in lieu of, right? And I think the struggle with that is, you as an agent very much should, and I feel like you should, put everything in writing. I think that's important. However, when it is in writing, and it goes to the lender, right? It opens up, right, storylines.
What's wrong with this house? Why would we loan money on that?
Exactly, right? So in one breath, I get it. In the second breath, I need you to see the other side of that story, right? Because they're like, well, this seems, concerning. Or if it is truly a concerning repair, sometimes it is cosmetic, but I've seen situations where they list one after another, and these are concerning. Foundation and this and that. That is definitely most likely going to put a pause to the transaction and have the underwriting leaders maybe request a structural engineer report at that time and open up, more things that possibly could cause more grief than you even expected, right? And I think it goes back to your wording too, right, of how it's worded, on that. So how do we navigate that situation? So then you say, I'm going to just ask for some closing costs, to cover that. Or maybe I want some money to go to a third party. When you start to work through all of that, we are now back to the situation that we're talking a lot of just recently of the word concessions, right? And when you're getting a mortgage, you have to make sure that you don't exceed the concession amount for that particular loan. And so that's right where we're back at that. So you might negotiate that the seller pays this large portion of closing costs, but what if it's over the maxed amount, right? And so now we're at the situation going, hey, we can't have them pay $15,000, $20,000 because the max is only possibly $9,000. So I think that is another situation that we have to continue to navigate through because we see this more and more. Even just recently. Yeah,
I think in Aaron's defense, not in his defense, but I think if you hear anything today, it starts with managing the expectations, okay? If you're a listing agent, you've got to give the seller heads up that a home inspector, 99% is likely going to come in and your home is going to have some sort of issues with it. It's just, that's the way it works. The weather hits and so forth. So you got to, I'm dealing with this right now with a home that somebody has owned for over 35 years. Now, if one thing I've learned over the years, if somebody has been in a home for, let's say, beyond 5, 6, 7 years, it's going to always be best, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but I believe it's going to be best that you call Aaron and his company to come do a pre-inspection. It doesn't have to be the full-blown one, but at least somebody get in the crawl space, get in the attic to make sure there's no deal killers. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Sometimes on those pre-listing inspections, or if it's just a maintenance report, like we've found full-on insurance claims, and people have had their kitchen remodeled from those leaks and things that nobody knew was going on. And something like that is, when you talk about halting a deal, like that's...
Yeah, I mean, I in the past I didn't do it because I figured, okay, how many guys do you have on your team?
6 inspectors plus
okay.
Me.
So with if all 7 of you went out and inspected a home, there's going to be some variation in the results of that because each of you have a different background. If one person's an electrical background, you're going to be harder on the electrical. If one's a plumbing, it's going to be a little harder on the plumbing possibly. I'm saying you're going to have I'm sure you trained your guys well, but there's going to be a difference in that. So in the past, I always said, well, don't bother doing a pre-inspection because it's going to be inspected anyhow, and they're going to find out whatever problems there are. But knowing that there's sometimes, if somebody hasn't been under a home for a while, there are definite deal killers. I never forget one time, an inspector, it was an older home, nobody had been under it for decades probably. There was a hole underneath this house big enough to park a car in. It had eroded that bad. I mean, that's probably extreme, but there was a monster hole under this house. The people didn't want their home inspected. They're just, they lived there forever. I think 2nd or 3rd generation. Nobody had gotten under it. But anyhow, back to the managing expectations. So if you got a seller, you've got to give them heads up that, look, this is part of the process. Do not take it personally. It's just part of the process. And if you've got a buyer, and we're going to negotiate to a happy ending, hopefully. And if you got a buyer, please understand, as an agent, you're a professional. Give guidance during that process. You're not a roofer or electrician and so forth, but you are a people professional, okay? What I mean by that is that inspector could give you a list of, it's going to be, how long is your report? 50 pages, 100 pages now? How long is it?
Between 30 and 40 typically.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that it hasn't gotten longer. But let's say it's, you're going to, that inspector is going to give you this long detailed report because that inspector, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but I'm assuming you'd like to stay out of court.
Yes.
Okay, so he wants to stay out of court. So what's he going to do? He's going to list everything because that's what he's being paid to do, is list everything within reason, point out cosmetics, point out natural wear and tear, this kind of stuff on a report, okay? But don't just hand the other side that report because you would alienate them. And don't tell your buyer, well, we're going to get everything taken care of. This is not a new house. If it's a new house, yes, we're going to get everything taken care of. Right. Probably. If it's a decent builder at all, they're going to say, okay, yeah, you're right. Even though those builders don't like an inspector to come in and tell them that they did something wrong.
They don't. Most
of the time, if it's one of your inspectors, I know one particularly, he spends as much time in new construction as existing homes. He knows what he's talking about, and I'm sure everybody does in your team. But my point is, don't expect that that existing home, 5, 10, 20 years old, or like this one that we're dealing with right now that's actually the same age as I am. It's actually 71 years old. That don't start picking on that home at that scrutiny level and expect you to keep a working relationship going on with the other side.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, that one of the quickest ways to alienate that process is to come in with this giant hammer in the name of negotiating when half of it's not legitimate anyhow. So my point is, of all that, is simply manage the expectations. If you're on the seller side, hey, give the seller a warning before the inspection ever shows up. I don't care how immaculate that home is, the inspector's going to find some things. That's just the way it is. Be okay with that. Have in your mind they're built in a few $1,000s possibly for negotiating or repairs. And if you got the buyer, this is where I see the problem happen over and over and over again, because so many agents don't have any construction experience, and they just turn that report over to the other side, or they list everything on that inspection results, and that's not the way that you get to the finish line. That's why so many times the deals fall apart, because it wasn't managed properly, is what I'm trying to get to. Well, I know it's long.
I like to say it's only a win-win if the buyer's happy with their home and the listing agent wants to do business with you again.
Right.
Right. If the buyer's agent and the seller's agent aren't at a good relationship when it's all said and done, like what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And you might work with them again if you stick around.
Yeah. Well, just like this situation that I was just referring to, the last time that Blake and I had an experience with a particular inspector was not good. Not because he scrutinized too close or anything like that. I don't fault anybody for that. It's because he broke something and then didn't own it. Mm-hmm. You know, he broke something. It was obvious he broke it, and then wouldn't own that responsibility for breaking it. And there were some slate shingles that were on the front porch after he got off the roof. That was a pretty good indication that he was responsible for those shingles.
I won't walk a slate roof.
So my point is, I told the other agent this. I said, in all sincerity, I have a hard time believing that message when I don't necessarily trust the messenger. So you're right. It's a small world, and you want to keep a solid reputation.
Yeah. And so in our reports, one way that we try to mitigate the unrealistic asks is that we differentiate our comments with, we preface them with, hey, if it's a repair, if it's a safety issue, or if it's something you need to consult another professional like an electrician, or you need to consult with an engineer about that, those things make it to the summary. If it's just a little bit of anecdotal information, it's something cosmetic, we're going to put it in there, and we're going to preface it with the word improve. So maybe it's an older install of a water heater. It's not up to modern building standards, aka it's not up to codes. We wouldn't expect it to be up to codes because it was installed in 2004, and the codes have changed since then. So we'll put that in the report as an improvement so that we can educate our client. When they go to replace that water heater, they're going to bring it up to modern standards, and they're not going to question, well, why wasn't this in my report?
Right.
So we put it in the report to cover everybody, but we don't make a big deal about it. That's not a repair item.
Right.
It's just some information.
Right.
So we can keep expectations realistic for everybody.
And you may go into a 71-year-old home and love the bones or love some sort of feel, but do want it to be upgraded, right? Do want things changed. That is where now we're seeing many more renovation loans, come to, the forefront. And we never saw that, for many years. It was a pass or fail inspection, right? People just buying homes and then calling us, later, questioning what they decided to do, a couple years ago. And we're talking about the renovation piece now. But, if you are not familiar, your clients can, or you as a listing agent can automatically market that on the upfront. They can purchase that, right? So you take the home price and all the repair cost You add that together, confirming that the home would appraise with all the repair cost and the upgraded values, and then you would put 3.5% or 5% down. One's going to be a government loan and one's going to be a conventional loan, but both are great. Both can close very fast. I would think under a 30-day period. And the reason why we give the full 30 days is just because you are working with a GC, right? That is not you, and so you need to go through, a couple other processes with everything. But it's still a win, right? So if you do find a home that is going to, you're back and forth with, they're not going to do the repairs, but you want all of these things done to fall in love and have the perfect home for you, a renovation loan is the way to go.
Is that a 203K?
That's going to be your FHA, or your home style is going to be conventional, right? Which is, again, 203K is great. We struggle here in Tennessee with a lot of HUD certified folks. But there are a few, we got to find them. But again, why people kind of use that a lot before and probably shy away is for the mortgage insurance piece, right? Because you now have mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. Where conventional, we can be a little more creative on that mortgage insurance, play. But one's 5%, which is the conventional piece. But again, that's still another, great option. So kind of recapping what we're talking about, the importance of, I love the idea of, a inspection early, right, for the seller, pre-inspection. I think that is a great idea because at the end of the day, you already are figuring out what they're going to bring up. Let's already address it with your seller,
right?
And
there's
kind of
no point in putting your head in the sand and pretend like
and maybe you're renegotiating the price right up front, or you're expressing the situation where the price of the home is already taking all of that into consideration, similar to what they're talking about right now with the interest rates. They already took this and this into consideration with where the rates are today. So that could be something. But then working with true professionals, that want to make sure that they're giving you all the information, but not possibly killing it. I think that's, key. And then whether you're asking for the repair to be completed or you're doing in lieu of, right, a dollar figure. When you decide on the dollar figure, because we were just talking about this earlier, how do you decide in lieu of repairs that figure? Just kind of come up with it, wing it? Are you giving a rough estimate of what the repair costs are going to be?
No, he's not doing that. He wants to stay out of that arena.
Yeah. Did you know that appraisers are required to do that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like if you get an FHA or a government appraisal done and there's government-related repair items, they're going to guesstimate the cost of what those are, so.
I love BossCat for that reason, I think, I don't want to overuse BossCat if you don't have intention to, use them for the repair. Let's remember, it's got to be a win-win situation there, but if you can use them often enough to justify using them more often, to get the number, then to me that takes away the mystery. It's usually the mystery, the fear is the biggest part of it. Once people understand that, okay, I can have this taken care of for $2,000, it's not nearly as scary.
Yeah, and when you all aren't getting along and the deal's about to fall apart, one of my core beliefs is always doing what's right for the consumer and the referral partner. And so if you're telling me it's $2,000 and it does make sense, I can take my appraisal breakdown, I can personally send it to BossCat, and I can have that covered and put it on the CD, and the lender can cover that too. So there's creative ways when we all work together, and like you're saying, working together with professionals that you trust, and that stay in their lane, right? This is my lane, that's your lane, and everybody's here to work, together. So, so then you're not winging it, right? Do you find that some are winging it? Like
totally winging it. This one yesterday was totally winging it.
So
there's $5,000 worth of repairs, and unfortunately, or fortunately, he didn't know that that one of the sellers was civil engineer who happened to be visiting mom at that moment, and so he laid eyes on everything. And they called reputable, vendors all over town. They had a real number of $3,200. So why in the world would they agree to $19,500? I don't know. Have you any idea? So that, and immediately when you do that kind of game, and I understand it happens all the time, and that's can be a negotiating ploy if that's what you choose, but you lose credibility and you lose relationship. The question was by two super awesome, wonderful, sincere, let's do the next right thing. Let's pass on this legacy and all this emotion behind this. And you try to hit them over the head with this giant club of a $19,500 when there's less than $4,000 worth of legitimate, real repairs. Don't expect that relationship to do well after that. And that's what we're wrestling with right now, because people lose sight of the importance of I know you're representing your client, I'm representing mine, let's do something even greater. Let's represent the integrity of the transaction.
Well, with what we provide in a home inspection report, people can really take advantage of people who are in a somewhat desperate situation, and I hate to see that. It's not good, and it's not good for anybody.
So Aaron, I'm curious. What would you suggest? So let's say somebody brand new to the industry is watching this. They're not familiar with construction. How would you recommend that they manage that, help that buyer, and they're working with the buyer, first time buyer, nobody knows what's going on.
Yep.
How do you recommend they get to the finish line not knowing any more than that scenario? Is there some secret sauce to this other than knocking on their broker's door?
Right. Well, and I think it is a natural progression. It's somebody who is new in the industry, and I've seen it again and again. Where I've seen young new agents come in. They don't know the difference between a downspout and a gutter.
I know.
And so I'll do a lot of hand-holding. I'll give them special attention.
Oh,
and they can go on and thrive and do wonderful things in their career. And I've watched it. I've watched them grow up to be brokers and have their own teams. And it's amazing.
Wow.
So their home inspector can be a resource. And I was sitting in on a broker CE class, and his recommendation to the people doing their CEs there was, have your home inspector consult with the buyer on what to ask for and how to ask for it. Because we can give them like, okay, well, you should phrase it this way so that we know it's done right. And I was on a phone call this Sunday, 40 minutes long, with a client, first time home buyer, cold feet, they're nervous. And three-way call with the agent, and we were, they wanted everything in the report repaired. They had a list of 19, 20 things. 5 or 6 of them were improvement items that were not on our summary. So, like, these are not action items. And just by me explaining to them what the deal was, why we labeled it as an improvement and not a repair, they backed off those things, making their own decision. Nobody told them not to ask for it. It was just, well, this is what was common when it was done.
Right.
So what that instructor told the brokers is, have them consult with the inspector. So that's something we can do. And for newer agents, that's awesome. It removes some liability from you and from them as they're able to have somebody else do it. And many home inspectors will not do that, right? Because we're worried about liability in our industry. So a lot of home inspectors like, hey, that's not what I do. I observe and I report, and how you want to fix it is up to you. So in those instances, you can reach out to somebody like Boss Cat and say, hey, here's this issue. Will you look at the home inspection report? Let us know what it would cost to fix and what your recommendation was on how to repair that. So depending on a home inspector's experience and history, if they're familiar with repairs and remodels and they're handy, they might say, well, this is how you do it. And for me, I'm comfortable doing that. But some inspection companies won't do it at all. And I understand why, right?
Yeah, no,
I'm
sorry. We live in a litigious society, and
it's a shame.
I get that. It's a shame. So tell me this, Aaron, real quick. I really appreciate you, first of all, being on here with us. How do people get a hold of your company, Tennessee Home Inspectors?
Our website's a great resource, getaninspector.com.
Getaninspector.com?
Get an inspector.
Wow.
Inspector.com. We got to find a jingle. I was going to go back to the Inspector Gadget jingle, but I forgot what it was. So maybe my own jingle. I made my own jingle up there for a second. There you go.
Getaninspector.com.
There you go. Hey, it's all about making the connection, and then it clicks.
Getaninspector.com. That's pretty easy.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because my kid doesn't watch TV. We tape a lot of the shows, but she can probably go on any show, any game show, and win all of the commercial jingles. She knows them all, and I was like, how? Please don't tell people that. That means all you do is sit around in front of a TV, or the perception is, So having a good jingle is key too. That's a good takeaway for.
Are you
for
taking notes?
agents.
Do you have getalender.com?
I mean, look at that. Let's just see. Jim, get to work. Hey, this was great. Again, you are one that doesn't do just inspections. Like I said, you bring a lot of value to our real estate community. And I'm grateful for our friendship and how much we've been able to make a difference out there with the real estate community. And we're grateful that you were with us. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We cannot wait to have you come back next week.
I do want to say one quick thing. If you get a chance to go to one of Aaron's classes, He just had one for us about a month ago. Be sure and do that, because the information shared is going to empower you, okay? Remember, you're paid by your authority in our industry. That comes with your knowledge exercised properly. That knowledge comes from surrounding yourself with the right people until you get that knowledge yourself, okay? So anyhow, thank you again.
Yes, join us next week. You've been listening to the talk of Music City Real Estate.